Halara Nightmare is a character from the game Master Detective Archive's Rain Code. They feature most prominently in Chapter 1, where they help investigate the mysterious Nailman murders. They're a very distant and level-headed person, and they're shown to be extremely skilled in combat. One of the things people really like to talk about when it comes to Halara is their gender, which in the game is left ambiguous and unspecified. I'm not going to be touching on that topic because I don't feel like opening that can of worms, and I also think it's largely irrelevant to their character as a whole, and there are far more important things to be focusing on. Let's dive in and take a closer look at the detective that can see the past. Halara's name is pretty tricky to analyze. Their surname, Nightmare, is easier to look at because the name itself is pretty straightforward. The word nightmare has a few different definitions. First and most obviously, a nightmare is a scary or unpleasant dream, but the word can also be used to refer to an experience or prospect that would be very unpleasant or terrifying, like saying, oh, it would be such a nightmare if this happened. And finally, it can refer to a person, situation, or thing that is very difficult to deal with. The second and third definitions of nightmare fit Halara the most. Halara has had difficult experiences, so it's not inaccurate to say that they have experienced a nightmare themselves. But they can also be a hard person to deal with, which earns them the nickname Halara from Shinigami. Halara's first name is the one that confuses me the most because I can't really find anything on it. It's the same as a Greek word that means something along the lines of take it easy, but that doesn't seem to fit Halara at all. They're not a lazy, relaxed, or laid-back person in the slightest. I've seen some people say that a Halara is a type of skirt, but if I try looking up Halara skirt, I just get results for skirts being sold by the Halara clothing company, so it's not very helpful. Basically, to me, Halara's name is like a 50-50. Their surname, Nightmare, makes a decent bit of sense, but their first name is something that I just can't quite figure out. I'm gonna mark it as inconclusive and move on. I'd like for you to let me know if you know or have something that might help me understand their name a bit more, though. Halara's design is among the less flashy of the main cast. They wear a simple outfit, and judging by how much running around and fighting they do, it must be pretty easy to move in. Their shoes look like rain boots, and their coat has a hood, so their outfit is pretty well suited to the rainy weather of Kanai Ward. It's likely they wear an outfit that's easy to move in on purpose so that it's not hard to run away or fight if they need to. Halara's eyes are pink, and the irises look like shurikens. Shurikens are weapons that are used to distract or misdirect. This is very similar to how Halara uses their coin as a weapon to disorient their opponents. They also wear glasses, and it's pretty impressive that they're able to do so much fighting with them. It's a surprise their glasses never go flying off their face in the middle of a fight. Halara wears two earrings, both of which are shaped like syringes. The left one has a red substance inside, while the right one has a blue substance. If we take a look at some common color symbolism, then red can often be used to represent sacrifice, courage, and danger, while blue can represent stability, inspiration, or wisdom. Both of these meanings for these two colors fit Halara pretty well. They have no problem running into danger, since their job as a detective is already dangerous enough on its own. They show a lot of courage with how they handle cases and fights. On the blue side, the idea of stability can be tied to Halara's calm and practical nature. They're also shown to be a pretty wise and knowledgeable person in the line of detective work. Overall, I like Halara's design. It's pretty clean and simple, but that's exactly the kind of person they are. I also think it's funny that their in-game profile describes them as attractive, which I can't really disagree with. Halara is shown to be pretty cold, reserved, and mistrusting. They don't interact with other people much, and they have an inherent hatred of humanity. They despise physical contact with other people, even being repulsed by just holding hands with Yuma. They say they have no faith in other people and are always doubting others' intentions. They're also very observant and intelligent. One of their sort of mottos is, with my logic, anything is possible. They're an extremely skilled detective, as shown when they piece together the truths and processes behind the Nailman murders and their locked room mysteries. Halara is also very calm and level-headed, and they're almost never seen to panic. When faced with the mystery labyrinth, they are definitely surprised and confused by the things that they see and what happens around them, but otherwise they're pretty calm. In Chapter 4, when Yako is stabbed and everyone's trapped in the secret lab, they try their best to remain calm and get the others to focus. Halara carries themselves with a lot of confidence that can border on arrogance, but it's hard to blame them for being this sure of themselves with how skilled they're shown to be. They almost never hesitate to just run into a fight because they know they can handle it. Their confidence in their abilities is part of the reason why they charge such a high price for their services. Speaking of their high prices, I wouldn't exactly say that Halara is greedy, but they are described as only caring about money. Their other motto is, I don't work for cheap. They even them put Yuma into debt to them for over 5 million Shien, and I don't know how that translates into any real-world currency, but it sounds like a lot of money. Halara is dedicated to their work, and they will do whatever it takes to solve a case that they're hired for. They prioritize solving a case over any laws or moral guidelines. If it's necessary, or they deem it the best way to carry out the investigation, they will lie to get the information that they need. Finally, despite Halara's cold and distant outer shell, they truly care about those around them deep down. In Chapter 1, they readily intervened with the Peacekeepers to save Yuma and the boy. In Chapter 3, they're willing to sacrifice themselves to save the rest of the group from the Peacekeepers, which is evidenced by them telling Vivia and Desuhiko to take care of the others. In Chapter 4, when Yako is injured and later dies, they seem genuinely frustrated and upset, especially when Number 1 calls and they seem very annoyed with how little he has told them. I really like how much depth there is to Halara's personality. They come across as really cold and rude at first, and their mistrust of other people never really goes away, but it's nice to see them slowly warm up to the others. Along with the rest of the main cast, Halara is first introduced in the prologue. Here, their observational skills are shown off when they list all of the reasons Desuhiko should have realized Yako had returned. Their penchant for gambling is also displayed when they're introduced. In Chapter 1, Halara helps with the investigation of the Nailman murders. They act as Yuma's assistant, although this does put him 5 million Shien in debt to them. Halara's forte is crucial during this chapter because it's needed to investigate the past cases and find similarities and differences between them. Throughout most of the chapter, Halara is kind of harsh and dismissive towards Yuma, especially since they're able to solve the mysteries much faster than him. At the end of the Mystery Labyrinth, though, they acknowledge him as a detective. Unfortunately, they don't remember that acknowledgement after leaving the Mystery Labyrinth, but they do still tell Yuma that he should be proud of himself for doing everything he could to solve the case. At the start of the next chapter, they even defend him from Desuhiko's teasing and mocking for not being a master detective like the rest of the group. Halara mostly disappears from the story for chapters 2 and 3. As a side note, this is one of my biggest complaints about the game, and I really wish all the detectives appeared more outside of their respective chapters. It's especially obvious with Halara because they're the one that features first, so there's like the biggest gap between their major appearances. In Chapter 4, Halara shows up again when they appear with Vivia in the secret lab to save the rest of the group from the Peacekeepers. While everyone else is panicking about Yako being stabbed and having no way to escape the lab, Halara is definitely also upset, but they try to hide and bury it and stay steady so that they can get the rest of the group to focus on what to do next. When Yuma says they need to solve the murder of Dr. Weska, Halara agrees and says that Vivia has the perfect forte for the situation. They explain his forte for him when he dodges around it, and they get very frustrated with him when he refuses to investigate the doctor's murder. Halara begins performing CPR when Yako's heartbeat fades, and later on, once everything is over and the dust has settled, they say that he passed away a while ago. This leaves the true cause of Yako's death ambiguous. Did he die from the stab wound, or did he die when Shinigami reaped his soul? Their appearance in Chapter 4 is the most upset we see Halara. It's clear they care about Yako and the rest of the group, which is a change from their distance at the start of the game. Then Halara is absent from Chapter 5 because almost everyone is. They reappear in the epilogue where they're preparing to leave Kanai Ward with the other detectives. They tell Kurumi to remind Yuma that they're still waiting for him to pay up if she ever finds him, and then they leave their coin on Yako's desk before departing from the city. In their DLC episode, Halara solves the case of a man whose death was ruled a suicide but whose daughter believes it was a murder. Yako is the one to take on the case, and when he asks Halara for help, they initially refuse unless he's going to pay them. Since he's short on money, he instead offers to let them keep a cat at the agency, and this immediately motivates them to work on the case. They're out of their seat in half a second. After the investigation is carried out, the culprit turns out to be the woman's boyfriend or fiance. I can't remember exactly which one it was, with the final nail in the coffin being the woman's dog identifying the man's scent. At the end of the episode, Halara is seen playing with a stray kitten, and Yako brings out some milk for it. Overall, I really like Halara's DLC. It's cool to see them in action during an investigation, and it's really nice to see their bond with Yako. And of course, it's very, very funny that all Yako had to do to get them to work on the case was say, hey, you can keep a cat here if you do this job. Halara's forte is postcognition, which is the ability to view a crime scene as it appeared when it was first discovered. This ability doesn't include either the victim or the culprit. The scene only looks the way it does when a third party found it. The witness's perceptions or impressions of the scene also don't affect it at all, so Halara's forte will never show them something completely false. The forte has some requirements to be used. Halara must be at the scene of the crime, and they must also know the victim's name and face. Although certainly a powerful forte, it has a couple limitations. For one, it's only effective within a 10-meter range around the body. They're also unable to see any living beings that were at the scene, so if someone were, say, hiding at the scene when it was found, their postcognition wouldn't show this person to them. Halara's postcognition is rooted in a natural psychometry ability that they were born with. When they were young, they would see random visions of the past, like flashbacks. Eventually, it reached a point where just touching someone or an object would show them visions from the past of that person or object. Figuring the ability could be useful as a detective, Halara joined the WDO and honed their natural psychometry ability into their postcognition forte in 3 days. Since developing a forte is generally said to be a kind of long and difficult process, the fact that Halara did it in just 3 days shows their dedication to their job. Halara's natural psychometry could be a reason why they dislike physical contact so much. Even if the ability has been honed and trained into a forte, they could still be worried that touching someone will bring up visions of the past. And this would understandably be pretty distressing, so it makes sense that they want to avoid that. Halara's forte is easily one of the strongest that a detective could have. Being able to look at a crime scene before it was touched or tampered with, especially without the influences of the witness's impressions or perceptions, is insanely powerful. It's no wonder they're such a good detective. Despite their strong dislike of humans, Halara holds an affection for animals. Their in-game profile says that they like cats and dogs, but it's their love of cats that the game puts on display the most. They keep a photo of a cat in their breast pocket because they find it calming, and when Yuma accidentally finds this photo in Chapter 1, they become embarrassed about it. Unfortunately for Halara, though, they're allergic to cats, so they can't keep one as a pet. They say their skin becomes itchy when they pet a cat, no matter how many times they've tried, which I find it kind of funny that implies they've tried over and over again, and it just keeps happening. This is one of the few things that seems to actually and genuinely upset them, and I get it. I would be mad too. Halara hides their affection for cats because it doesn't fit their image. They know they appear cold and reserved, and they would rather maintain that image, so they prefer it if people just don't know how much they love cats. Halara is described as only caring about money, and they say you can tell the true nature of a person by how much money they're willing to spend for something. They charge high prices for their work, but when they are hired to do a case, they will see it through no matter what. Notably, Halara has trauma related to money. When they were in middle school, their parents were caught in a scam that turned out to have been run by their best friend of all people. This friend used Halara to extract information that they later used to scam their parents. Although Halara's family didn't suffer complete financial ruin, it did destroy their parents' relationship, which resulted in a broken home. By this, we can assume Halara means their parents separated or divorced. This was a massive betrayal for Halara to experience so early in their life, and it does a pretty good job of explaining their mistrust in other people. It's hard to blame them for not trusting others when someone they called their best friend was only using them to scam their parents. In a way, money revealed this friend's true nature, and so now Halara believes only in money. They hold the view that what someone does when money is on the table reveals that person's true nature. If someone doesn't offer enough money for their services, they see that as that person just not really caring about what they're supposed to be investigating. But Halara cares about money for another reason. They want to save up enough money to establish a program that will help cats experiencing hardship. Because cats provide a calming experience for them, they want to repay the favor in some way. The betrayal Halara experienced at their best friend's hands could also explain why they don't really want to be close to anyone, and why they don't want anyone to see their cold and uncaring image slip. They might fear that someone will use personal information against them again. This could be a reason why they hide their affection for cats, and it also makes their bond with Yako seem that much more important to them. They reached a point where they didn't feel like they had to hide their love of cats from him. They trusted him enough to let him see a side of them that they normally concealed. In conclusion, Halara is cool and I love them and they're great. End of story. I found them interesting right from their introduction, and I really liked seeing how they gradually warmed up to the rest of the group. Just in chapter 1 alone, they went from being repulsed by holding Yuma's hand to actually shaking hands with him. Their DLC episode was pretty good too, and I really like how it showed their bond with Yako. I do think it sucks that they just kind of faded into the background after chapter 1, but that's not a Halara specific complaint, it's a game complaint. I don't like how the detectives just kind of disappear a little bit after their chapters. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I love Halara, and I hope you do too. I have analysis videos on Makoto, Desuhiko, and Fubuki as well, if you're interested in those, and I do fully plan to keep making these analysis videos on Raincode characters for the foreseeable future, by which I just mean until I run out of characters to analyze. Thanks for watching, and have a good day!